If you're taking medication for allergies, sleep, anxiety, depression, or even bladder control, there's something very important you need to understand. Some of the most commonly used pills in these categories may be quietly increasing your risk of dementia. And this isn't speculation or fear based talk. Large long term studies show that taking certain everyday medications daily for just 1 year can raise dementia risk by nearly 50%. What makes this especially concerning is that these are not rare or experimental drugs. They are medications many people over 60 take every single day. Some are prescribed. Many are sold over the counter. In fact, there's a good chance at least one of them is sitting in your medicine cabinet right now. In this video, I want to explain which medications pose this risk, why they affect the brain so deeply, and what safer alternatives may exist. And if you have family members over 60 who take medications for sleep, allergies, anxiety, or bladder issues, this is information they need to hear as well. The group of medications we need to talk about belongs to a class called anticholinergics. That word sounds technical, but the idea is simple. These drugs block a brain chemical called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is one of the most important neurotransmitters in the human body. It acts like a spark plug for your brain. It allows brain cells to communicate with each other. It supports memory, attention, learning, and even muscle movement. When acetylcholine levels are healthy, your brain functions smoothly. When acetylcholine is blocked over long periods of time, brain signaling becomes weaker and slower. Over time, this disruption can lead to memory loss, confusion, and eventually dementia. Here's the problem. Anticholinergic drugs are everywhere. Many common allergy medications, including older antihistamines like diphenhydramine, fall into this category. That same ingredient is also found in many over-the-counter sleep aids. Some anxiety medications belong to this class as well. So do several bladder control medications, certain IBS treatments, and even motion sickness patches. Some of these drugs are prescription. Many are not. But they all share the same basic effect. They reduce acetylcholine activity in the brain. And this isn't just theory. Multiple large studies have confirmed the risk. One major review analyzing data from over 1.5 million people found that anticholinergic drug use was an independent risk factor for both all-cause dementia and Alzheimer's disease. The more exposure a person had, the higher the risk became. Another analysis that reviewed more than 20 studies showed that using anticholinergic medications for longer than 3 months increased dementia risk by an average of 46% compared to non-users. That increase was seen even in people who had no memory problems when they started the medication. Brain imaging studies have made this even more concerning. Research published in major neurology journals shows that long-term anticholinergic use is associated with increased brain atrophy and reduced brain metabolism. In other words, these drugs don't just make you feel groggy. They can actually change the structure and function of the brain itself. To understand why this happens, we need to look briefly at how acetylcholine works. In the brain, acetylcholine binds to specific receptors that allow neurons to communicate efficiently. These receptors are especially important in areas like the hippocampus and cerebral cortex, regions critical for memory, learning, and decision-making. Anticholinergic drugs block these receptors. In the rest of the body, this can reduce symptoms like nausea, bladder spasms, or intestinal cramping. But in the brain, blocking these signals interferes with memory formation and cognitive processing. In the short term, this can cause symptoms like brain fog, slower reaction times, and confusion. Over the long term, especially in adults over 60, the damage can become permanent. This risk is higher with age for a very important reason. As we get older, natural acetylcholine levels already decline. The brain becomes more vulnerable. When medications further suppress acetylcholine, they accelerate a process that is already underway. The danger increases even more when multiple anticholinergic drugs are taken together. This is extremely common. Someone might take one medication for anxiety, another for sleep, and a third for bladder control. Each one blocks a portion of acetylcholine. Together, they can significantly shut down key brain pathways. Now, this does not mean these medications should never be used. There are situations where short term use is appropriate. A few doses for severe allergies or brief insomnia is unlikely to cause lasting harm. The real concern is daily use for months or years, especially in people over 60 or those already experiencing memory changes. So, what should you do? The first step is awareness. Review all of your medications, both prescription and over the counter. Ask your pharmacist or doctor whether any of them have anticholinergic effects. The second step is never stopping a medication on your own. Instead, talk to your doctor about whether safer alternatives are available, especially for long term use. For sleep, there are options with minimal anticholinergic activity. For allergies, newer antihistamines tend to have far less impact on the brain. For bladder issues, non anticholinergic medications may be appropriate for some patients. If you've been taking these medications for a long time, there is no need to panic. The brain remains adaptable, especially when other risk factors are addressed. Prioritizing quality sleep, regular physical activity, blood sugar control, and cardiovascular health can all help protect cognitive function moving forward. Understanding how these medications affect the brain gives you power. Dementia is not caused by a single factor. It develops through many small influences over time. Reducing unnecessary anticholinergic exposure is one important step in protecting long-term brain health. In the next part, I'll explain how to identify high-risk medications more easily and how to talk to your doctor about safer options without compromising symptom control. Now let's slow this down and make it practical because information only helps if you can actually use it. At this point, many people ask the same question. How do I know which medications are dangerous for my brain and which ones are safer? The challenge is that anticholinergic effects are not always clearly labeled. A medication may be prescribed for sleep, allergies, anxiety, bladder control, or stomach issues, but nowhere on the bottle does it say blocks acetylcholine. That is why so many people take these drugs for years without realizing what they are doing to the brain. One of the simplest ways to identify risk is to look at the purpose of the medication. Drugs that dry things out, dry the nose, dry the eyes, dry the bladder, slow digestion, or cause drowsiness are often anticholinergic. That drying effect in the body is usually a sign that acetylcholine is being blocked. Another warning sign is confusion or grogginess, especially in the morning. If a medication helps you sleep but leaves you mentally foggy the next day, that is not normal aging. That is often a drug effect on brain signaling. It's also important to understand that risk accumulates. A single anticholinergic medication used occasionally is very different from daily use. And combining several medications with anticholinergic effects multiplies the risk. This is why medication reviews are so important after 60. Now let's talk about alternatives, because this is where many people feel stuck. They worry that if they stop or change a medication, their symptoms will come back or get worse. But in many cases, safer options exist. For allergies, newer generation antihistamines tend to have much lower penetration into the brain. They still help control symptoms, but they're less likely to interfere with memory and cognition. This alone can significantly reduce long-term risk when allergies require ongoing treatment. For sleep, the goal should always be to support natural sleep cycles rather than suppress the brain. Sleep medications that rely on anticholinergic sedation may help you fall asleep, but they interfere with restorative sleep and memory consolidation. In contrast, approaches that support circadian rhythm, stress reduction, and mineral balance tend to be safer for long-term brain health. For anxiety, especially mild to moderate anxiety, non-anticholinergic strategies often work better over time. Chronic anxiety itself increases inflammation and cognitive risk, so the goal is calming the nervous system without shutting down brain communication. Bladder medications are another major source of anticholinergic exposure. Many older adults take them daily without realizing their cognitive impact. Newer alternatives work through different pathways and may offer symptom relief without the same brain effects. This is a conversation worth having with your doctor. Digestive medications, especially those used for IBS or cramping, can also contribute. In some cases, dietary adjustments, targeted supplements, or different prescription options may reduce the need for long term anticholinergic use. Now, if you've already used these medications for years, here is the most important thing to understand: the brain is not helpless. While long term exposure increases risk, reducing that exposure can slow further damage and support better function moving forward. This is where lifestyle becomes critical. Regular physical activity improves blood flow to the brain and increases acetylcholine activity naturally. Even daily walking makes a measurable difference. Sleep quality matters deeply. Poor sleep accelerates cognitive decline regardless of medication use. If sleep is fragmented or shallow, the brain does not clear waste products efficiently. Improving sleep hygiene is one of the most powerful protective steps you can take. Blood sugar control is another key factor. Elevated blood sugar damages small blood vessels in the brain and worsens the effects of neurotransmitter imbalance. Many people focus on memory without addressing glucose, but the two are closely linked. Cardiovascular health also plays a role. High blood pressure, cholesterol imbalance, and poor circulation reduce oxygen delivery to the brain. When combined with anticholinergic drugs, the effect on cognition can be magnified. I want to emphasize something important here. This is not about fear. It is about informed choice. Many people over 60 are doing their best to manage symptoms without realizing the long-term trade-off they are making. Once you understand the mechanism, you can make better decisions with your healthcare provider. Here is a simple action plan you can start today. First, make a list of all medications you take, including over the counter products. Second, ask your pharmacist or doctor which ones have anticholinergic effects. Third, discuss whether long term use is truly necessary and whether safer alternatives exist. Never stop a medication abruptly without medical guidance. The goal is not sudden change, but thoughtful adjustment. If you are already noticing memory lapses, confusion, or worsening brain fog, addressing anticholinergic exposure should be a priority. These symptoms are not always irreversible, especially when caught early. In future videos, I'll be explaining how to actively support acetylcholine production naturally, how nutrition affects brain signaling, and how to protect memory as you age without relying on medications that work against the brain. Before we end, I want you to take one moment to reflect. Look at your medicine cabinet tonight. Ask yourself whether every pill you take is helping your future, not just your symptoms today. If this information was helpful, share it with someone you care about. Many people are unknowingly increasing their dementia risk simply because no one ever explained this to them. Thank you for taking the time to protect your brain. Awareness is the first step. I'll see you in the next video.